Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 5 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. Before we start today, just a quick notice that I have reopened my 3D printing website. You can visit dangly3d.com and get your very own Karma Stories Carmen Chameleon 3D printed channel mascot. And yes, it comes complete with cookies. I'll be adding new items to that site pretty much every day, so make sure you check it out at dangly3d.com. Alright, on to the stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from The Bearded Guy. Don't take every second Thursday off? Okay. Many years ago, I worked in aged care as a personal care assistant, the lowest rung of nursing staff, basically responsible for all the physical labor, such as showering residents, assisting them to go to the toilet, getting them in and out of bed, that sort of thing. I loved my job, I genuinely did, and for a while worked at an agency going from place to place before getting poached by a specific nursing home, which is where the Malicious Compliance takes place. I had been working there for about a month, doing 4 days a week, all afternoons 3 to 10 p.m., and 2 of those afternoons were back-to-back Wednesday and Thursday, and this is where the other nurse comes into play. Every second Wednesday, without fail, she would call in about 20 minutes before her shift. The 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. overnight shift was due to begin, leaving no time to get agency staff in to take over. Now, I could wait until they arrived, but by the time they got there, it would likely be after 12, and my trains home would not be running. So in the end, I took on a double shift, 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., leaving me tired mentally and physically trying to get home on a packed morning rush hour train. So not much fun. But given the other option was to leave my residents without proper care, and that would never ever happen. This meant that by the time I got home, it was around 9:30 a.m., and I couldn't get immediately to sleep due to needing to eat, shower, and do the plethora of tasks needed to be done before going to bed for the day, meaning I wasn't able to get to sleep until around 12:30, and my train to work left at 1 o'clock. This was obviously untenable, and after trying to do a double followed by a regular shift sans sleep a few times, I realized I was becoming a danger to my residents, my fellow staff members, and myself due to not being able to maintain concentration. In the end, I told my RN that on the Thursdays after a double, I would not be able to do my shift for fear of someone getting hurt, which would open the nursing home and myself to potential legal trouble, not to mention someone suffering because of my choices. So this had been happening for about 6 months now when I get called up to the office of the owner, who promptly sat me down and berated me for taking every second Thursday off and not being a team player. I tried to explain why it was that I was taking those Thursdays off, but she would not listen. So in the end, I walked out with a write-up and a threat of termination if this behavior continued. Fast forward to the next Wednesday when, as usual, the other nurse called in 20 minutes before shift start saying they couldn't make it, leaving us a nurse down for the night. So the only person on for that entire shift would be a registered nurse, and you can't lift or assist people with only one person without using a hoist. And even then, you're meant to have 2 people for safety reasons. The nurse in charge of afternoons rolled her eyes after the call and said, "Looks like you're doing another double, bearded guy," to which I replied, "I can't. And since staying until agency staff get here is not an option, since I wouldn't be able to get home, I suggest you call the owner and see what she recommends. And if she needs me to stay, I will, but only if she gives me the direction herself and then confirms it with you." After 10 minutes, the owner hadn't answered any attempts to call, and I said, "Sorry, I have to leave," and the RN for the night shift began to get angry, to which I responded, "I will get fired if I stay here and then need to take tomorrow off, or someone could get harmed if I stay and then work. Neither of these is a great outcome, so I have to go." Now, I knew they were never going to be able to get agency staff with such short notice, and that even by the slimmest of chances they could find someone, it would be several hours between registering the request and someone showing up. So I walked out the door and hung around the corner for half an hour, knowing I would get a call sooner rather than later, and that I needed to be close by in order to go back and ensure my residents got the care they needed overnight, and had my idiot grin to wake up to in the morning, especially for the 3 people who loved early morning showers. The call came, I returned, and 2 nights later I got a call from the owner who authorized me to work doubles as needed and take the next day off for safety reasons. As far as I know, the nurse who did the late call-ins was still working there when I left a year later. In the end, my residents got the care they deserved, and I got some sleep after working 15 hours straight. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Still Not Elf. It says, I don't understand why they didn't fix the schedule. The other person clearly was taking those days off no matter what the schedule said. Why not just move some days around? I mean this rhetorically, not as a direct question to you, OP. OP responded to this one and said, common sense and clear thinking? This was privatized healthcare. These things were not in ready supply. Another commenter down below called Sapiophile23 said, how did the other nurse not get fired for so many callouts? OP responded and said, honestly, finding staff even back then was difficult, so firing her caused more issues than to just keep her on. Now, if I were OP, I don't think I would have just walked right back in there after a phone call. I would have requested to have what they said in writing, so that they couldn't come back on me in a couple days and say, hey, you didn't work that next shift? Haha, you're out of here. I sound like a broken record on this channel sometimes, but document, and get everything in writing. This story comes to us from Milled Oats. Complain to everyone about your work if you must, but you're done working here equals 10 years wages. So every morning I walk my dog at the off-lead dog park. As it's a small town, all the dog walkers have become friendly. I, mid-40s, made friend with June, 75 to 80. June told me this lovely malicious compliance story from about 25 years or more ago. June was working as a school teacher and was retraining as a social worker. She left teaching for 2 years working as a social worker when her previous school asked her to return and run a class for at-risk children. The deal was, she would teach children aged 12 to 18, grades 7 to 12, who come from backgrounds of emotional, physical, and other abuse. The job was casual, so she didn't get paid for holidays, sick leave, etc. She was supposed to teach 6 kids with an aide, but ended up with 20 kids and no teacher's aide. As you can imagine, their behavior was terrible. She believed she could help, and she said she did make some real differences. The work was really stressful, but she was passionate about it. After 3 years and multiple promises of making her a permanent staff member, getting an aide, plus smaller classes, June was burnt out. She demanded help from the principal, who refused and told her since she has complained, it's for the last time, and sacked her. He told her she is casual and she can go complain to everyone and everywhere, but as a casual worker, you have little rights. So, June did complain to everyone. School inspector, the union, Department of Education, it was a state school, and even her local member of parliament, who told her she has had a tough deal, but this is the life of a casual worker. She finally complained to the state authority that deals with safe work practices. They were interested as the school had breached state policy on class sizes for special needs kids, teacher aides, providing a safe environment, etc. They ordered the Department of Education to pay her workers' compensation while they sorted it out. So now, June was paid each fortnight, including leave and all benefits, 52 weeks a year instead of 40. The fallout was big after the investigation. Lots of people sacked or moved on. What this did was leave June without a boss. The Safe Work Practice Department closes the case as they believe it was now a Department of Education matter to pay June out. Everyone has forgotten about June, and she got lost in government paperwork. They still paid her, and she kept quiet. It took 10 years before they found her in an employee audit. Then, they paid her out. June was ready to retire about then, so it worked out beautifully. I love this one because now June's spending her retirement years just taking the dog out and enjoying life. We've had some similar stories recently, and if you haven't yet, make sure you check out Forgotten Employee, The American Dream, a video I did about 2 years ago now, that tells the story of a guy who keeps on going into work even though he has nothing to do, and it's all the things that go on while he's sitting there terrified that they're going to find out. It's a wonderful one, and I'll put a link in the description on YouTube and on the podcast. This story comes to us from Old But Not Too Tired. I already said we were going to do it, so just do it. I work on an IT team for a small company, and one of the things we support are marketing campaigns for our company. So to set the cast, let's call my boss Kathy, and there's Peter, the sales manager. Peter has this brilliant idea of targeting a cross-section of 2 audiences for a new marketing campaign. He pitches it in a meeting, and everyone gets super excited about this. After the meeting, Peter asks Kathy to set it up. Kathy pushes back immediately, saying she is confident that this new audience is not worth our time, and it is maybe 200 potential customers out of 200,000. Now, Peter has a lot of sway in the company and doesn't want to admit he made a mistake about his customers and said, well, I already said we were going to do it, so just do it. So I put in the requirements, and it is worse than Kathy thought. 47 people. Once again, this is escalated to Peter, who insists we just do it, and he complains we are behind schedule on getting this done. Admittedly, it has been a few business days because we did not prioritize this stupid request. I pass along the new audience to our marketing folks who design a campaign, set up a couple of new pages on the website, etc. Now, regarding profitability, our average transaction sales are pretty small, but a lot of repeat transactions from our customers. But just with the time I've spent on it, there is no way this campaign is paying even my salary, much less everyone else who spent time on it. Kathy doesn't want me to spend another second on it, but Peter, who again, we have kept in the loop this entire time, wants to see it in our Power BI reports for the sales team and the C-suite. Normally, something this small would be rolled up into an other category, but hey, Peter wants to see it, so I make sure that it is listed. In the update bar chart, there is a line of text at the bottom, no bar associated with it because after 4 weeks, clicks 2, sales 0. I was not at the meeting after this went live, but I heard Peter went on a long spiel about the growth potential of this new campaign. Kathy and I are confident he's going to put it in his self-review about how innovative he is, assuming he still has a job. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Cool Beans Chili. It says, a wonderful story. I just hope that you and Kathy have downloaded all the relevant emails to a personal account just to prevent them from mysteriously disappearing due to Peter following the principle named after him. OP responded to this and said, wow, I had not thought of this, doing it now. Another commenter down below called Tufural said, Peter is a true politician. It doesn't matter what the truth is, he just makes up his own. Peter is the sales manager. That means that they're supposed to be pretty smart about sales and maybe a little bit about marketing as well. OP, it's time to make a chart. Let's do a Venn diagram of the customer base and show that 99.7% of the customers are being excluded from his project. Let's make sure this is on poster board size paper and then call a meeting where we bring in Peter and Kathy and the whole management team just to present this one diagram and then see how it goes over. This story comes to us from Dark Moon Firelight, using the system to defeat stupid requests. I've been at my new job long enough I can share this now without feeling like there'd be blowback. I'm a web designer. Every place I've been, I get put in charge of the fleet of websites whatever company or group is running, and then I go through and do my thing, making sure the sites are tight, efficient, and user-friendly as I can. Web design is like any task. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And for websites, that means the designer in charge has to be the arbiter of clutter. If things get to be too much on a page or requests come in that would degrade the UI of the site, we had to reject them. We want sites to be fast, light, and easy to use. Being the person in charge of the sites, I was generally the one to reject requests. We shouldn't do this because X, Y, and Z reasons. I was told by my bosses, that I couldn't say no, and that I had to be customer focused even when the requests to update the sites were coming from those without technical knowledge, or the desire to understand what I was saying and the reason why I wouldn't do something. This could also go over on r/boomers being fools, because most of the people that hated me, some younger than them, telling them no, were also of that generational set. Regardless, after a number of times of them getting a no because, from me, then going over my head to my boss, and then my boss saying just do it, I had to come up with a solution. If they were going to go around my informal process based on my knowledge and experience, I would formalize it. At the organization I was working at, we had standards which were signed off by the higher-ups and had the word of law and guidance, which did get some sign-offs but didn't go through the lengthy formalization process. Standards you had to follow, but everyone thought guidance worked the same way. That was the loophole. I wrote a 60-page web update guide going over everything in the process, ensuring that any question I'd been asked, anything that needed to get done, any stupid question that had come my way over the previous 2 years was answered. I then got my boss to sign off on it and then sent it around, and also posted it on the internal use portal too. From that point forward, the guide was what we followed. Best part, and this is the malicious part for those wondering, I never had to get any changes to the document approved. It was designed as a living document, and I was the sole person in charge of it. Requester, hey, I want to do this on the page. I go and edit the web update guide to specifically disallow what they were requesting. Oh, I'm sorry. As per the web update guide, we can't do this. Worked like a charm and made my job easier from that day forward. Wait a minute. Did OP just use bureaucracy against the bureaucrats? Let's be completely honest here though, OP did a wonderful job, and something to remember is the best way to deal with red tape is be the one who's holding the tape roll. This story comes to us from Lynxes and Larynxes. Asked to monitor our working hours? If you say so. This malicious compliance happened nearly 10 years ago. The relevant context is that, at the time, one salary for this job was made up of a low basic salary, but a big uplift for the intensity of the job you were working, in terms of working hours outside of 9 to 5 p.m. The way that employers made sure jobs had the correct uplift was through a process known as monitoring. In order for monitoring to be valid, a certain proportion of the employees on that job had to complete a diary of their working hours for 2 weeks. Of course, the diary was on an archaic electronic system, a pain to fill in, finicky, slow, and generally made in a way to make it non-user friendly. In this particular location I was working in, there was one job which everyone dreaded working, because it was widely acknowledged that the workload was extremely high, frequently working 2, 3, or even 4 hours of unpaid overtime every day to get the work done, and this was not adequately reflected in the overall pay. This had been going on for the better part of a decade, and it was abundantly clear that the workload vastly outstripped the compensation. However, every time anyone complained, the employer would hold up their hands and say, "The monitoring doesn't reflect that," often because the threshold proportion of employees filling out the monitoring hadn't been reached, and washed their hands of the situation. They went full, "These are the rules, we're just following them." Essentially, the workers on that particular job were so overworked and the monitoring process so laborious that there was never enough people filling it in to reach the threshold. Cue malicious compliance. My best friend and I were suffering through this job for 4 months, alongside 3 others. In fact, over the course of the year, 15 of us would work that job. It came to the monitoring period, and my best friend and I were meticulous about filling in the monitoring. We logged every single gosh darn second we worked overtime, not missing a day for 2 weeks. Not just that, however, we lit a fire under the butts of everyone else. We texted, called, cajoled, harassed, or otherwise persuaded all of the others on this job to fill out their monitoring accurately too. In fact, we were so driven that all 30 employees filled out their monitoring correctly. Well, the monitoring period ended, and lo and behold, it demonstrated we were being vastly underpaid for our roles, risking big penalties for the employer. Not only that, but it turns out they had fudged the payment rates for a number of other jobs too. The employer wasn't defeated yet, as they once again pointed to the rulebook, saying that any monitoring which showed a change in pay was due to be repeated, so they set up a second fortnight of monitoring. You can guess what happened. Instead of being defeated by another round of monitoring, the cohort suddenly had the bit between their teeth. The second fortnight of monitoring, we did significantly less badgering of people because suddenly everyone was rather motivated to do it themselves. The second round of monitoring came and went with the same results as before: significant underpayment. The employer continued to stall, but we pointed at the rulebook they had so often thrown in our face. They ended up having to pay people who were doing the underpaid jobs more to make them up to the correct level of income. Furthermore, the rulebook said that the payments were retroactive for the whole year, so even those who had worked those jobs before monitoring happened got back paid. Overall, I was owed and received nearly £10,000 in back pay. I reckon the employer shelled out the better part of £250,000 in owed pay, all because we stuck to the system like they told us to. It seems like OP and their best friend were the ones to make everybody else realize just how vastly underpaid they were. Sometimes it just takes a person going, "Hey, look at this. No, really, look at it," for people to realize just how much they're getting screwed. Also, there were probably people in that group who just didn't want to rock the boat previously because they didn't know that everybody else was getting screwed in the same way. This just shows how much power there is in great numbers of people. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to the favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. Also, if you're listening and watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.